All right, hey everybody. So last week you watched an ed puzzle about the tutorial process that was basically tutorials in action. Typically, if we were in school like normal, I would go through this PowerPoint with you guys first. So some of this may be repetitive. However, as you probably know, the more that you hear things, the more that you see things, the more likely you are to remember them. But there are also a good bit of stuff in here that was not conveyed in the ed puzzle that you watched last week. So I'm going to go into a bit more detail about the tutorial process, what it means, and why we do it, and everything. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. And I may go in and out of presenter mode as needed. So what are tutorials? They're a time for you to collaborate and help each other with questions that you're having in certain academic classes. One thing that you will quickly come to learn is that tutorials are not necessarily difficult, but you have to put in a good bit of effort. And if you're putting in the effort, you will get results. This is not a time for you to gather with, 4 to 6 people who you have the same class with, and then, gripe about the teacher that you have and how unfair they are. You get nothing out of that. That's just, you're in an echo chamber and you're all just sharing things that you want to hear. Tutorials are about trying each other, collaborating, critical thinking, and trying to expand your knowledge in whatever subject area that you're doing your tutorial on. All right, so in a normal environment, tutorials would occur on Tuesdays and Thursdays. As you well know, this is not a normal environment, so I think the plan is right now that we've all talked about is that we'll do some version of tutorials, which, as you know from last week, and our very limited use of this, it's more of like right now, because you freshmen don't really know much about it, and that's not anyone's fault. It's just the nature of the beast right now. They're more like glorified study halls, or chances for you to ask questions about something. But eventually, we're going to try to work our way towards these becoming like normal tutorials, or as normal as possible, like as if we were in the classroom. So once every 2 weeks on Wednesday is when we'll do them. If or when we get back in person this year, they normally occur on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Typically, the gradebook's set up differently this year. But typically tutorials count for 30% of your grade. They are a huge part of the Avid curriculum. Like I said, if you're doing tutorials correctly, they're a great chance for you to collaborate with your peers and, really test each other and help each other out. So that's why we do them. All right. Taking notes in class, I'll do more with the note-taking process later. Typically, I would have already gone over the note-taking process with you. Cornell notes, or sometimes I'll refer to them as C notes. These are the types of notes that you should be taking. Once again, this is a difficult, trying time for us, so take notes however your teacher gives them to you at this time. Like I said, later I'll go over Cornell notes on all the other different types of note-taking that you can do. But, a key part of every class is to take notes in some format. So you need to make sure that you have those and you're bringing those to tutorials. So prepping for tutorials, this right here is a sheet that you are going to become immensely familiar with over your 4 years in the Avid program. This is it's called a tutorial request form, but you will quickly learn to just refer to them as TRFs. All right. So it says at home here. At home, sometimes you'd be given time in class to work on this. Wherever. You're going to complete side 1, which is this side right here of your tutorial request form. Okay. This will include a higher level question from your academic classes, homework, classwork, quizzes, tests, whatever. And in the coming slides, I'm going to break down what this will look like, because as you can tell here, okay, back to where I was. As you can tell, I had to take out the form that was on this slide and replace it with one that's in an upcoming slide. So this is what TRFs look like. The only difference is that right here where you see the words know, show, and tell, those are not actually on the sheets. We'll get to that in a little bit, though, the reason why those words are there in a little bit. So you'll see up here, and you may have to zoom in a little bit. Subject, this right here is where you would write whatever class you're doing this for. Math 1, Math 2 honors, Earth and Environmental honors, right? Normally, I would say put the class name. If it's an honors class, make sure you include that. And also, in parentheses, tell me the name of your teacher, because sometimes whenever we make groups, we'll try to, include the people that have, Mr. Battalion together. We'll try to, do that for math, or, that way that, that you're probably in or around the same place as other people in your tutorial group. Right underneath here, standard or essential question. If your teacher, has an essential question or an I can statement, a lot of teachers use what's called SWOBOT. Students will be able to. They often have these written on the board somewhere. Once again, this is not normal time. Normally, whenever we're in school, in class, in person, this is the case. This right here is where you would write that standard or essential question or SWOBOT down right there. And then right here, you put your name, avid period, it's third, and then make sure you put the date of the tutorial. You can see right here, whoops, sorry. You can see right here, this is how it's graded. So you have a total of 25 possible points, but this first page right here, this is called the pre-work inquiry page. You can get 12 points on this page right here. The other side is worth up to 13 points. So your initial or original question, this can be similar to, however, this should not be exactly the same as the essential question here. Okay, because remember, when it says essential question, we just mean like, an I can statement for this particular lesson, this SWOBOT for a particular lesson, or whatever. So your initial or original question should be a basic thing. Why did or how did the Mongols build such a giant empire? Something like that. I don't know. Something very basic, okay? Because when we get down here for your question from your point of confusion, this should be a very detailed, more in-depth question that you have developed as you have gone through this key academic vocabulary page, your know, show, and tell boxes here. So basically, this is like the rough draft question, and then down here should be like your final, deeper question, which is called your point of confusion or your POC. All right. So this is your original question here, initial or original question. Make sure you put, if this is from like a textbook, put the number or the page number of the textbook or problem number, just something here. If it's from a bell ringer or a warm up or whatever, you can say, warm up 11, 19, 20 or whatever, date it is, right? Just give me something to, know where you got it from. Key academic vocabulary or definitions associated with a topic question. So I'll stick with the theme of Mongols. You could say, Mongol Empire. That could be your first academic vocabulary word right there. And then you'll tell me, like, who were the Mongols over here? You'll define the term. And then right down here, you could say, empire, right? So you can define what the word empire is. And once again, this is just an example. All right. So we're getting down here into your no box. And by the way, you can see over here, this is how many points it's worth. So your initial or original question will be worth 1 point. Key academic vocabulary is 2. And then now we're down here. You can see it in all the boxes. All right. So what you know about your question. So this is where it's exactly like it sounds like. All right. This is where you say what you know about your question. All right. So I know that the Mongols were located in Central Asia. All right, boom, there's one thing. I know that Genghis Khan was one of the most well-known and powerful rulers in the Mongol Empire. There's another. All right. Your critical thinking about your initial question down here. Okay. This is often a box that a lot of students struggle with, at least at first. Okay. One thing that you'll quickly come to learn about tutorials is that math and science, specifically math, are a lot easier to do tutorials on just because of the way that tutorials are set up and run. It's a little difficult to do English and social studies. That's just the nature of the beast, right? So your critical thinking box is going to look a lot different if you're doing English as opposed to math or science or whatever. All right, so critical thinking about your question. This can look a number of ways. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and go to a couple other future slides to kind of give you some examples. So, and I'll come back here. Well, actually, now that I think about it, this is where we should be anyway. So we're in the critical thinking box. All right. So this is where you should be showing your work and ideas for what you have tried so far. So this, you may have a T-chart in here. It may be a Venn diagram. It may be a step-by-step process. And in fact, here, so here's an example of English. All right. So this person made like a bubble map. All right. This is for an algebra class. So they have started working out a problem, and then they have got down here to the last part where they got stuck at. Okay. Geometry, same thing. You can see, like I said, for math, it's a lot easier to do. Social studies, so they made a bubble map here. So they're talking about the Alien and Sedition Acts, and then what are some key characteristics of it, and then they've gone off from there. All right, so I'm going to go back real quick. All right, so this is not, make sure you get this, this is not a list of what steps you will follow during the tutorials. All right. This is where you're actually trying to solve your question and show your work and ideas here. All right. And then over here, you'll see that identifying the tell box, identify general steps and processes. This is where you're just telling me what you did right here. So know, this is where you're telling me what you know. This is what you're showing me what you know about it. And now you're telling me. So you're describing the steps that you took here. All right. So for example, you can see right here, identify their general process and steps. They drew a bubble map. Okay. Then they filled out characteristics about the two topics. In this case, it's a commentary sentence and topic sentence. And then they compared and contrasted them. What are some things that are alike and different? Okay. Same thing for algebra here. You can see this is where they, right here is where they, you know, they wrote down what they knew. They showed you the work, and then they told you about it. All right. I'm just kind of, you'll be able to see these later. I'll make sure to put some examples of TRFs up at a later time. All right. And then from here at the bottom, like I said, let me go back to the social studies one just because I'm a social studies teacher and that's easier for me to do. All right. So their initial question here was the law that passed against sedition in 1798 a violation of freedom of speech? Explain why or why not. Then they went down here. They did their, their show, their tell box. And then remember, this is kind of like your rough draft of your point of confusion. And then here is the question. This is their point of confusion, actually. How can I determine if the Alien Sedition Act of 1798 is a violation of freedom of speech? So you can see it's not super different from this initial or original question. However, it is more in depth. They're making it personal. How can I determine whether or not this was a violation of freedom of speech? All right. So I can't stress this enough, people. Your initial or original question should not be the exact same thing down here on your point of confusion. Okay. Can't be that way. That's just lazy. All right. So that's the front side of your TRF. Now, if you're wondering how do I know what is a higher level question, this is something that I'm going to get into in a little bit later, at a little later time. Once again, this is another thing where, if we were in class in person, I would have already gone over Costa's levels of thinking. the difference between higher level questions and lower level questions. So I'll go over that at a later time, but just know that for now, and I know you may not or probably don't know what level 2 or level 3 questions look like. That's fine. Like I said, I will get into that later. All right. But just know that your point of confusion question should be either level 2 or level 3. All right. So this is a hint I always include. If the questions that you're asking can simply be answered by, as if it's a yes or no question, if you can easily look in your book or your notes and, identify a quick and easy answer, that's probably a level 1 question. Like I said, I'll give you some more stuff here for that, so ignore that bit right there. But if something causes you to literally step back and say, that's probably level 2 or level 3 question. All right. So back into the tutorial process. Normally, like I said, you do your TRFs Monday and Wednesday because, we do them normally Tuesday and Thursday tutorials. So you would turn in your TRFs. I know you don't know what my classroom looks like yet or anything, but right behind my door, there's an Avid folder. That's where you turn your TRF into by 8 in the morning, which is the normal start time for school. +1, similar thing. I know you don't really know how the schedule normally works, but typically, we go first period, second period, and then we have +1, and then we go to, there's lunchtime, and then there's third period and fourth period. So your +1 teacher sometimes may let you go and turn in your TRF to me. However, they also have the right to say no, and they may need you for something. So this is why I made sure to put in bold lettering. If your +1 teacher is kind enough to allow it, you can bring it during +1. All right. And then that's, around the time that we'll start sorting groups out, and I know where to put everybody. All right. This, hold on one second. Sorry for that. I had to go back and replace the TRF with, the one that I did before, because the TRF that was originally on this page looked different. It was an older version. So like I said, this is what your normal TRF will look like, minus the words no show and tell there. So tutors, which are just going to be seniors. If you're doing math, Mr. Guy, who's a phenomenal math tutor, will also be a tutor that we bring in to help y'all. Tutors will score the side 1, this first side right here. Like I said, you haven't seen the back side yet. Don't worry about that. We'll talk about that at a later time. They score side 1 of the TRFs here, which remember are worth up to 12 points. You got 1 point here for your initial question, 2 points for key academic vocab, what you know about your question, critical thinking, steps, and then your point of confusion, right? That all adds up to 12 points. All right. If the TRF is turned in late, the tutor can deduct as much as all 12 points from the score. Typically what I do, especially since, I teach you freshmen, is I'm a little more lenient at first, where, if you forget to turn it in to me, on time, maybe I'll deduct 2 points, later. If you continue to do it, maybe it goes up to 5 points. And then ultimately by the end, normally a first semester, I would say, all right, if you turn it in late, I don't care if you did all this flawlessly, you're not going to get any credit for it because you needed to have turned it in on time. All right. So forming groups, TRFs are divided into groups by us avid teachers based on types of questions. Like I said, relations with, if you have the same, teacher or not. We try to group you all together if you do. Normally we'd have like a Google sheet that you would all fill out and say, I'm going to do Math 1 honors, or I'm going to do honors world history, or I'm going to do Math 1, or I'm going to do earth and environmental, or whatever. And then we group you up like that. But like I said, we'll talk about that later. But I can't stress enough, you have to have your TRF turned in at the time or before the time that I stated before in that previous slide. That way we have plenty of time to go ahead and group you up. Typically we would have, there's Mr. Tebow, there's Ms. Chris, there's Mr. Fushi, and then there's me. Normally we designate our rooms based on subject. So, if you're going to do science, whether that's chemistry, biology, earth and environmental, physics, whatever, you'd be in Miss Chris's room. If you're doing social studies, whether that be world history, civics, American 1, American 2, or whatever, you'd be in my room. We normally do Mr. Tebow's room is normally the math room. So, same thing there, Fushi, English, right? That's how we break it up. And then, you've got your individual groups within that room. All right. So, like I said before, seniors will act as tutors plus Mr. Guy, who helps out with math. Tutors help facilitate the process, call students to present their questions on the board. Whenever you get in your groups, like I said, I'll normally have, once again, we're acting as if we're in person here. I'll have the groups projected onto the board as you walk in. So, if you're a freshman, which you all are, you'd be coming in to my classroom and you'd look on the board and you'd be like, all right, so I'm going to get my TRF from the folder where you turned it in at earlier. And then you're going to go to Mr. Tebow's room. Or if you're doing English, you go to Mr. Fushi. Or if you're doing science, you go to Miss Chris. History, you'd stay in my room. All right. So presenting the questions, right? You're going to present your questions to the group one at a time by writing them on the whiteboard. Remember, from the Edpuzzle you did last week, you should be giving a 30-second speech to explain what you already know up until your point of confusion. All right. You can go back and watch that video. They're open to you so you can get an idea of what a 30-second speech would look like. All right. It's basically just where you're describing your process, what you did on your TRF. All right. And then group members and the avid tutor will ask questions to help the students with their questions. All right. Hold on a second. Let me double check something here. Yeah. All right. So you're going to write your problem neatly on the whiteboard. We've got plenty of whiteboards. You're going to face the group members. This is a good chance to practice public speaking skills, make eye contact, be engaged. You're going to read your question out loud to the group. You can obviously have your TRF in front of you. Explain any prior knowledge you have, what you already know about the question, explaining what strategies you use in attempting to answer the question. And then you're going to, talk about where you ultimately got stuck at, and that's where you present your POC, your point of confusion. All right. So here's just some examples of questions to ask during tutorials. All right. I can't stress this enough, and I know I said this on the, I even made a note on the Edpuzzle that you did last week. You, as students, whether you're the presenter or you're part of the group who are trying to help the presenter out, nobody gets anything out of this if you just say, oh, here's the answer. Nothing. You get nothing out of it. That's lazy. That defeats the entire purpose of tutorials. It's anathema to what you're supposed to be doing. All right, so don't do that. These are just examples of questions to help guide them. All right. Ultimately, the presenter themselves, with the help of the group and the tutor, they should be answering the question themselves. All right. So here's just some examples. Can you explain your question in another way? You're basically hinting towards them. So if you're a member of the group and you know the answer, you're trying to hint towards them. You're leading them in the right direction so that they find the answer themselves. Okay. Make sure also, I know this isn't a question to ask during tutorials, but you have to come prepared to tutorials. If you need a math book, bring a math book. If you need a calculator, make sure you got a calculator. If you got a textbook that you're working out of, bring the textbook, right? Have your notes available. If you're, doing a tutorial because you missed a question on a quiz or a test, bring that question from the quiz or the test. That way you can try to answer this point of confusion and help master this content better. All right. Reflections. This is the back side of the TRF. I wasn't able to find a quick screenshot or picture of it, but this is the back side of the TRF. You restate what your point of confusion was. If you did not get to present that day in your group, pick one of the people that presented, use their point of confusion, and then fill this back side of the sheet out that way. Okay. So you're going to restate what your point of confusion was, or whoever, presented that day, what you learned from the point of confusion. You gained a greater or better understanding of the point of confusion by or when, whatever, what you found meaningful about the tutorial session. The more that you are detailed with this, the better your sentences are structured, the more time that you put into the reflection, the better your grade will be. Can't stress that enough. Why reflect? There's apparently a study out there that students who reflect on their learning will do 18% better than students who do not reflect. This is just a bunch of math and stuff to back that up. But anyways, so recording notes during your tutorial. All right, you need to have a piece of notebook paper out. You can take 3 column notes during the tutorial process. All right, so this is where you say, all right, let's say there's a kid named David. David's point of confusion. You write David's name over here on the side, what his point of confusion was, steps taken during the tutorial, right? And then ultimately, well, not steps taken. That's what you do over here. You do the notes right here, and then you'll describe the steps or processes later. Again, this is very similar to in the TRF whenever you show what you know, and then you tell what you know. All right. Like I said, this is kind of confusing at first, but it gets easier as we do it. When done, tutors will finish scoring the TRFs, turn them into me, and that's in essence tutorials. And I know that that's a lot of information thrown at you, but that's that's the way that it is. This is one of those situations where the more that you do them, the better you get at them, the more you get out of it, right? But we got to start somewhere, so that's why we're doing this. All right. Thanks everyone for listening, and make sure that you answer all the questions on this Edpuzzle, and have a good day.